That fella couldn't do anything. He couldn't even kneel to pray. And he got saved. Are you saved? That fella couldn't join the church. He couldn't join the church. He couldn't get baptized. He couldn't get baptized. He woke up with God. He woke up with the devil. Are you saved? So that fella didn't take the sacraments, didn't take the sacraments. Didn't say the rosary, didn't take the rosary. Didn't tithe, didn't tithe. He went to heaven, he went to hell. You saved? Didn't keep the law, he didn't keep the law. He broke the commandments, he broke the commandments. He didn't keep the golden rule, he didn't keep the golden rule. He woke up in glory, he woke up in the pit. Are you saved? You're saved. If you're not saved, you're over here or you're over here. You sure ain't in the middle. He said, Lord, remember me, thou comest thy kingdom. And Jesus turned to him and said, verily I say unto thee, today shalt thou be saved. It's like that. You have been saved? If you ever saved, you were saved like that.
All right. In this video, I want to talk about what I guess they call dispensational futurism. And that's what these people call it. And they say that it's wrong. And they say that it has these 5 points you see over here to the top left. And that these 5 points are wrong. And I think it's funny because these people basically use straw man arguments in this sidestepping where they get away from the scriptures. Because when I preach this stuff, I use the scriptures. But they always sidestep it and they're like, this was something that was taught by Darby in the 1800s and no one believed it until then. And as if that matters. As if that matters. Right? Why does that matter? What does it matter if the people started preaching the rapture in the 1900s? What does it matter? If it's shown in the scriptures, it's in the scriptures. So that argument is just stupid. So what? Let's just say Darby, he's the one that saw it and he started preaching it. Does that make it wrong just because no one else was preaching it before him? So you see right there that argument is just to sidestep to get away from the scriptures. Because they also don't talk about what Darby actually taught. You'll never hear anybody say, well, Darby, he taught this because he saw this in the scriptures and his interpretation, understanding the scriptures are wrong because of this, that, and the other thing. No, they'll never talk about what he actually said about the scriptures and why he came to the conclusion he came to. You'll notice they'll never talk about that. And then they'll turn around and talk about things like, oh, there's some people who say that some of the early church writings will talk about the rapture and all this, and they don't actually quote them or bring them up. They'll just dismiss them and be like, but that's just all just trying to make something out of nothing kind of thing. And they dismiss it. And I always think that's weird, that these people who are against this never actually get into the scriptures and show people like me how we're misunderstanding what we're reading, how we're misinterpreting it. And they don't counter it by saying, no, this is how things really are. I'm going to show you that through the scriptures. So what I would like to do is actually go through these 5 points. And I'll start with the order they put them in. Starting with the pre-trib rapture. I'm not going to get into huge detail because we got 5 points and I don't want to be here breaking down each one of these in great detail. So, first one is pre-trib rapture. Let's go through really quick. Here in Revelation chapter 1, verse 5 and 6, John tells us, the church, that we've been made kings and priests unto God. Right? By Jesus Christ. And he talks about the church here being the 7 candlesticks, and the 7 stars are 7 angels. Right? We come over here. Like I said, I'm going to go through this fast. If you need to, pause, read it, think about it. Revelation 3, all of a sudden, at verse 1 here, the seven stars and the seven candlesticks become the seven stars and the seven spirits of God. Because 1 Corinthians 6:17, those joined unto the Lord are one spirit. The church and the spirit are intertwined and connected. We're made one spirit with them as we're made one body with them. The Church of Philadelphia, they're told they have a door open to them that no one can shut. And they're going to be kept from the hour of temptation that's going to come upon the whole earth to try those that actually dwell on the earth, giving you a hint that these people are not going to be on the earth, as they're going to be going to a wedding, because it talks about those that overcome from this church, the church of brotherly love, that they are going to take on God's name, which is what happens to a bride when she gets married. She takes on the name of her husband. And then we have a falling away with the church of Laodicea. Right, the falling away happens first, right? People always say that. Well, we see it happen right there in Revelation chapter 4. We see that door opened in heaven. John, whose name means the grace of God, who represents the one body of the church, just like Enoch, he's taken up. Grace is taken from the earth. The time of grace is over. He is taken up into heaven. Immediately he's in the spirit before the throne of God. Right? Just like what Paul says. Immediately, in a moment, right? In the twinkle of an eye, you go from the physical body to the spiritual body. You're absent from the body, you're present with the Lord. Right? The same way Paul describes it, we see it happen here to John. And then you go on, you see that the seven lamps, which are the seven spirits of God, are in heaven. And then in chapter 5, coming down here to verses 9 and 10, the 24 elders are redeemed from all the kindreds and tongues of the world. So they're not just the 12 patriarchs of Israel, the 12 disciples, because they're all Jews. This is from every kindred and tongue and nation from all over the earth. And they're what? Made kings and priests unto God. This is the church. This is exactly who John says the church is in chapter 1. Right here, we see the rapture happen before Revelation 6 at the first seal when the tribulation starts. So just using Revelation alone, not getting into some of the stuff that we get from the gospel, some of the stuff that Paul talks about, just using this alone, real quick going over it, we see a pre-trib rapture. And I'm just going through this quick so I can get through each one of these points in a somewhat timely fashion. 7-year tribulation. We can see basically this whole story in the story of Joseph. Joseph, representing Jesus, gets betrayed by his kin, his brothers. He gets sold over to the Gentiles, presumed dead. Right? He then becomes the head of the Gentiles, second in the kingdom. Just like Jesus is second to the Father. All right? And then a 7-year famine happens that brings who? Joseph's brethren, Israel, back to him. This is used to get them to come back to accept what they've done to their brother, their kin. And it's a 7-year famine that affects the whole world that gets this to happen. But we're going to stay in Revelation because we can get deep into the story of Joseph to get more into that, such as he marries a Gentile woman before the 7-year famine, which again shows the pre-trib rapture, the church taken care of with Jesus before the famine, right? But let's stick here in Revelation for the best we can for all these points, unless a little more detail is needed. But I believe it's the first mention here, Revelation chapter 11. We have the 2 witnesses who for 42 months are going to preach. Right? So that is 3.5 years. All right, so we got 3.5 years mentioned. And then all of a sudden, we have this beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit that kills these two witnesses. Right? And we read about in Revelation 12, 1,203 score days, which is again 3.5 years. And then down here it mentions it as times and half a time, that 3.5 year period, again, down here at verse 14. And then in Revelation 13, where there's a deadly wound to this beast, but it's healed, and he's allowed to continue 40 and 2 months. So see, you have 3 and 1/2 year periods of time, and I'm going over, I know that, really fast, but we see the 7 years right there. Also using the story of Joseph, right? This one is nonsensical. They say, a singular antichrist. We only use the word antichrist because that's how people know him. In Revelation, he's referred to as the beast, the son of perdition. He's also known as, Paul puts it, the man of sin, the lawless one. Or in the Old Testament, the idol shepherd. Right? The little horn. We know he's not called the Antichrist. There's many Antichrists. But we call him the Antichrist because that's how people know him. They don't know the scriptures well enough to know that he's the beast. So we don't actually teach there's a singular Antichrist. We teach that there's this fella here that people know as and call the Antichrist who's going to show up. So that's a misunderstanding, and I think it's an intentional misunderstanding that they use to misrepresent what people like me are actually teaching when we teach what they are calling futuristic dispensationalism. This is something that we clearly see as Revelation is about the future. Revelation was written in 90 AD, so some people try to say these things happened before then, but they obviously didn't, because John is writing about these here in 90 AD after most of these things supposedly happened according to other people. All right? Israel has a big role. Yes. Let's go back at a couple things here. The church was raptured, and then in Revelation chapter 7, we read about 144,000 Jews being sealed. Right? And then there's, after that, it mentions about a bunch of Gentiles. In the church, there is no Jew or Gentile. The church is gone. That's why there's a separation between Jews and Gentiles now. And then going back to Revelation 11, the two witnesses, where are they preaching? They're preaching in Israel. And John is given a measuring reed to measure the temple. Right? Because it has to do with Israel and Jerusalem, as it talks about the city where Jesus was crucified. And then in this last one, Jesus returns at the end, and he sets up a 1,000 years, a kingdom of peace for 1,000 years after he comes back and fights for Israel. Well, we can see this. After Revelation 17 and 18, we read about Babylon and Babylon being judged. And then all of a sudden, the whore is judged. The bride is now his wife. And he returns. And his vestures are dipped in blood because he's treading out the winepress of the wrath of God. As he returns, you connect this to what we read in Zechariah chapter 11, I believe, where the Messiah returns on the Mount of Olives. The Mount of Olives splits in half. He comes through and apparently wipes out a huge army, as the Revelation talks about an army of 200 million come towards Israel. And Jesus returns and destroys them. as we read here, and he makes judgment. Then Revelation 20, Satan is bound up for 1,000 years, and there's 1,000 years of peace. And again, going back to the Old Testament, I believe Zechariah mentions it, there's peace to the point where your children can mess with poisonous snakes and not have to worry about getting bitten and poisoned. The lambs will lie down with the wolves, and the lions will eat hay with the cows and stuff. That this is going to be a time of true peace, and a peace that's supernatural, even with the animals. Not just peace with people aren't warring with one another. Right? This is what is being told to us here in Revelation 20, this time of peace. Right? And you can read that there. Right? And this is just going over it real quick. If you got some objections, since we can see there is a singular beast, man of sin, idol shepherd, we know that there's a one little horn, but people know him as the Antichrist. So they're playing word games because, yes, in 1 John, they mentions many antichrists. Yeah, there is, such as the people who are preaching against this very well may be following that spirit of Antichrist and may be an Antichrist themselves. Right? But when you say the son of perdition, people are like, huh? You say the idol shepherd, huh? So we use the word Antichrist because that's what people think of. That's let you know who we're talking about. And Israel, obviously, big role, 144,000 Jews, the two witnesses doing miracles all throughout Israel, Jerusalem. And we can see that Jesus comes back at the end of all of this. It's clear as day. I know I went through it fast, but I know I'm not going to have your attention forever. And you want to go about and do different things. Matter of fact, reason why I'm going through this fast is I actually want to go do something else. But I also wanted to get through this. And I figured, you know what? People, they got objections. They want to say some things. I can break down these points and even do a video for each one of these points. So, thank you for your time. I'll catch you in the next one. Alright, it's the end of the video. And I figured I would do an ending segment to my video so I don't have to keep repeating myself. But I do want to remind you to do what Isaiah said to do and seek out the book of the Lord and read it. Putting line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little, doing what Paul said, and studying the word, showing yourself approved unto God, rightly dividing the word of truth. And if you read English, that would be the KJV. And then do what John has Jesus recorded telling the church of Philadelphia, and keep his word, preserve it, protect it, hide it in your hearts, and not deny his name. And then Jesus will never be able to tell you do err not knowing the scriptures. And he'll keep you from the hour of temptation, which is going to come upon all those that dwell upon the earth here shortly. And with that being said, I'd like to ask you for your support. You watching the video all the way to the end helps out a lot, but if you could like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, share the video, share the channel, interact in the comments section. These things help out a lot, especially with people telling me that their likes are not being registered, that they get unsubscribed, and all kinds of other ways being shadow banned. Your help in this way was greatly appreciated. And if you're able to give me a little bit more time and pray to our Heavenly Father that he keeps this ministry going and he uses it to reach those who he wants to reach, to get the truth out to the world, to make it a bright light, and to feed his sheep, to feed his children, even to bring forth more children, and that he would watch over all of us, his born-again believers, and take care of us, provide for us, and protect us, even after he comes and gets us, which looks like it's going to be real soon. And just to amen in Jesus' name to that should be all we need. But if you could help out some more, I know times are rough and they look like they're getting rougher, but if you're able to support financially, there's a few ways you can do so in the info description box, such as PayPal, Venmo, and there's a couple other ways you can support if you so choose to do so, which would make sure I can keep this ministry going longer than the foreseeable future, because this kind of support has been drying up there. It's pretty much non-existent lately. So if you could help out in that way, it would be greatly appreciated to make sure I can keep doing this. But if you could at least pray, I know God will provide. And sometimes it's a change of ministry, so maybe it won't be a ministry online anymore. But hey, if you want to keep seeing this stuff, pray. And with all that being said, thank you so much again for your time and attention, for watching this video all the way through. I appreciate it. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one, and may God bless you and yours.